Pastor, doesn't science disprove the Bible?
Isn't Genesis just a fairy tale?
Is God for real?
Did he really create everything in 6 literal days?
Didn't God just use the Big Bang?
Why is there death and suffering? Do you really believe the Bible?
Didn't man evolve from apes?
For answers to these questions and more, stand by for Believing the Bible.
Welcome to Believing the Bible. This is Scott Lane with Dr. Carl Williams and our producer Ed Salzadell, all directors of the San Antonio Bible-Based Science Association. We are here to assure you that you can believe the Bible from the very first verse. Today we're going to take up what some people believe to be an age-old problem which is unanswerable. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Now, truthfully, we jokingly or not so jokingly sometimes use this as a filter for belief systems in the creation evolution argument. If you believe that the chicken came first, you're a creationist. You're a person that says God formed everything fully formed, as is stated in Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2. Or if you say, well, the egg obviously had to come first because that's where all these animals come from, then you're an evolutionist. Who laid the egg? Who made the egg? Well, there's a group that did some research and it found what they say is a billion-year-old unicellular organism called Chromosphere perkinsi. Has provided groundbreaking clues, they say, about the genetic programming required for egg formation. This discovery suggests that the processes necessary for creating eggs existed more than 1 billion years ago. Now, I'm not even going to go into how they decided that the thing was 1 billion year old in existence. Now, although unicellular, one cell, it exhibits a fascinating reproductive process that mirrors the embryonic stages of animals. During reproduction, this C. perkinsi divides itself into a cluster of smaller cells, creating structures with distinct types of cells, a behavior typically associated with multicellular organisms. This cell cluster closely resembles an animal embryo in the earliest stage, known as a blastula. The microbe's ability to replicate such sophisticated processes suggests that the genetic programming for creating eggs may have existed well before the evolution of the animals.
Wasn't that the perspective that they used like back in the 50s and something like that, to say that the human embryo was the blastus as opposed to being like a human being in the process of being...
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute, but you're right. That's exactly what I was going to point out in just a few minutes. Don't jump ahead there, Ed.
Yeah, well, no, you're doing it wrong, because this is the big thing they're trying to get to. How did you go from single-cell organization to multi-cell organisms? And they're trying to suggest how that could occur here. But does this really offer a potential answer? Now, C. perkinsi forms colonies that persist for about a third of its life cycle before dispersing. And what they're suggesting is, well, the next development is they simply don't disperse, that they stay together as a colony, and then they differentiate in terms of function. Incidentally, is any of that being observed here?
No.
None of it. Okay.
Over 1 billion years, you'd think it would have happened.
You start to identify the just so story. Carl, when you're listening to all this, what are your thoughts?
Well, unlike you, I would definitely want to ask him, where was that billion of years proven? I mean, how do you know it's just billions of years old? And as far as asexual reproduction, how does that evolve into sexual reproduction? In other words, even if it mirrors the appearance of a sexually produced embryonic organism, how does that organism get the two different sexes? So you got to put that in there somewhere. And this behavior of the C. perkinsi colony, how is that any different than the green algae, which also can cluster when it starts to reproduce? And that was also mentioned years ago, that there were suggestions that the green algae was a precursor to a multicellular organism.
So this is just another nominee.
It's another nominee, and is it any more believable than the green algae? I'm not certain. Certainly from what they put down, it is not. Another question is the appearance the same as function? And one of the things we need to remember is that Ernst Haeckel, years ago, over a century ago, tried to bamboozle biologists and into believing Darwinianism by having his drawings accepted as literal fact when he drew the embryos of several different types of organisms to look almost the same, including things that looked like gill slits, so that the gill slits that were actually on fish embryos looked a whole lot like the branchial clefts that were in the human embryos. So that's why even until the 1970s, when the Roe v. Wade argument was made before the Supreme Court, it was argued scientifically that, well, these are just being aborted during their fish stage of development and aren't human beings.
Which makes it much more comfortable to abort the fetus because it's not human yet.
It's not human yet. However, now, at least 96% of biologists, when asked when the human being becomes a human being, they will agree it starts at conception. When the sperm fertilizes an egg, it is a human being.
You have human DNA and an individual's DNA, which is not even the same as the mother's.
As the mother's or the father's, yes.
Right. Now, one of the statements in this thing is unicellular organisms bridge the gap to multicellular life. Do they actually have the observation and data to say that that's exactly what they're looking at?
Well, what they've reported is that for a period of time, it clusters together and looks like a blastula for a period of time, but then it becomes unicellular, and that's where it ends up. It starts unicellular, ends up unicellular, reproduces unicellularly. So it hasn't bridged any gap other than just clustering, which the green algae also does under certain circumstances.
We're going to expand upon that after the break. You are listening to Believing the Bible. This is Scott Lane with Dr. Carl Williams and Ed Salzadell. If you would like to learn more, go to sabsa.org. That is SABBSA.org. We're talking today about which came first, the chicken or the egg, and whether or not a certain research project has really shown how single-cell organisms turned into multicellular organisms. One thing that's really not discussed in all of this is what they're honing in on here is that these single-cell organisms do hang together for a period of time before dispersing, and that they do have the ability to differentiate in two different directions, which is part of the formation of a multicellular organism. Question: where did the pre-programming come into these unicellular organisms to even have that ability?
So far, there's been no mutation found that has ever added information to the DNA code. So they have yet to find that out. Although one of the researchers, his name, I'm not sure, Maureen Olivetta, University of Geneva researchers, said, well, nature can invent anything, basically. So we're waiting for nature to invent it.
They won't say God can invent anything, but nature can invent
anything. Nature can invent anything. So how does nature invent anything? Yeah. Nature is not a sentient being. So that would be a question I would ask of that person.
We don't know that this was the precursor for multicellular life. This is an observation that was done with people who were trying to find that jump from unicellular to multicellular. But this is just a hypothesis with gaps. In Genesis chapter 1 and 2, it details God forming every animal and man and placing them in the garden, not as eggs or babies, but fully formed, grown. Thus, the creationist answer is that the chicken came first. Folks, are we seeing enough here to show us how life made the jump from single cell to multicellular organisms?
No, but they're using it as a paradigm for that.
I agree that they're trying to make the C. Perkinsi look like it is a precursor, but they haven't given enough evidence that I would say is believable or justifiable to make that assumption.
Right.
So as we too often see within creation circles and within the evolution controversy, what we find here is this could be described as just another just so story. It is not something that lays the foundation. Of course, that is what they're looking for if you are looking at biology from a secular perspective. They're always looking for how did all the phyla get here? How did everything develop? And what has not been mentioned in all of this is that leap that they're talking about from single cell to multi-cell and then to different speciations is always the addition of more and more knowledge and instructions into the DNA. How does that get there? And nothing that they're talking about here addresses that topic in any way.
No, it doesn't.
Why doesn't it? Because for that, you would have to admit that there is a creator, that there is a designer, that there is some intelligent being putting intelligence into the system. And that's something that they can't even consider because it's not part of the naturalistic framework.
I don't think they want to.
No, and sadly, that's true. We need to recognize the creator in all of this.
Believing the Bible now has a new way you can support our ministry and get some great gifts. For a donation of $10 or more, we will email you a copy of Repetition in the Bible by Jack Cassione, which shows the Bible to be a self-proving document and shows God's protection of His Word over the ages. For a donation of $25 or more, we will also mail you a copy of Scott Lane's book, What If God Wrote the Bible, showing 6 things we should find in the world and in the Bible if God is the author of the Bible. To get these great gifts, send your check or money order to SABSA at 7620 Avery, Live Oak, Texas 78233. That's SABBSA at 7620 Avery Road, Live Oak, Texas 78233. This information for ordering is also on our contact page at sabsa.org. Information for creation events in our area are on our website's calendar page. For more information or to schedule a presentation, go to sabsa.org or call 210-599-7240. When you go to our website, you can click on a link to our newsletter. Our website has a link for contact information on which you can order our newsletter to be emailed to you, or you can call us. Also go to whyshouldyoubelieve.com. That is Terry's website containing articles looking at current day issues from a biblical perspective. SABSA meets the second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. We are now meeting at Faith Lutheran Church just south of the corner of Jones Maltzberger and Thousand Oaks. There you will find biblical apologetics and creation science teaching found nowhere else in Bexar County, as well as the availability of books and videos on these important subjects. If you missed any part of this show, you can listen to the show anytime by going to the AM 630 KSLR, the Word in South Texas website. Click on KSLR Podcast, scroll down until you find Believing the Bible. Please join us again next Saturday for Believing the Bible. I'm Scott Lane, and for Terry Reed, Dr. Carl Williams, and Ed Salzwell, thanks for listening, and we hope you found today a reason to believe the Bible.